Well, we've got a interesting situation. Apparently, Nick, who usually introduces the show and everything, is stuck in a area that has got electrical power outages. So the third power in charge, or the third person that's in this network and everything. I think Kim is on the road and everything. I'm going to bring in my good friend David Walker to see what he's got to say about Doge and whether Doge is done, because that was the topic that definitely the powers that be, Nick Palveda, Kim Calhoun, wanted folks to talk about today, and we'll see if other people like Sasha and others join us very shortly, and all along those lines. But I'm bringing in the man that is the star of this show and everything like that. See what kind of clothes he's got on and everything like that. He's usually got his shirt on with him and everything like that. So he's got his shirt on and everything like that. So he's got the Naval Academy, and we'll see what he's got to say about what's taking place with apps happening with Doge and just the economics in general. Because even on our last show, we had some people that saying that prices are down, some people are saying prices are going up. So where are we economically, David? And what is your take on what's going on in this world of ours economically and how Trump is doing economically?
Well, tomorrow will be the 100th day that
Yes.
President Trump will have been in office for his second term. And so I imagine there'll be a lot of analysis of how has the first 100 days gone. I would argue that it's gone very well from the standpoint of border security, clearly infinitely better than it was before. But beyond that, there's a lot of bumps. From an economic standpoint, we need to get two things resolved, three things pretty expeditiously. We need to get this tariff situation resolved because that's created a lot of uncertainty, a lot of volatility. It's reduced the willingness and ability of companies to invest because they don't know what the situation's going to be like. We need to get the situation resolved with regard to what our budget's going to be for this year and next year, and whether or not the tax cuts are going to be extended in whole or in part, for next year. We also, need to try to be able to take steps to start putting our finances in order. And that's probably a good transition to Doge, because my understanding is we really wanted to talk about Doge today. And, Elon Musk, who may still be the world's richest person, although he's lost a lot of money while he's been head of Doge. Again, Doge is the Department of Government Efficiency, which is a little bit of an oxymoron because it's not a department, but nonetheless, it is an initiative designed to try to help cut spending and headed by Elon Musk. Initially had a goal of trying to save $2 trillion in 1 year for fiscal 2025. That goal was later reduced to $1 trillion. That goal was later reduced to $500 billion. Recently, Elon Musk has announced that he intends to leave Doge in the near future for several reasons. One, because he's a special government employee, and as a special government employee, he can't work more than 130 days in a given year. And he seems to have been working 7 days a week, since January. So his 130 days will end, no later than the end of May, early June. But I think he's going to be going before that. And so the real question is, what have they done and where do we go from here? And, what they've done is basically employ artificial intelligence to access a number of government information systems looking for transactions that may be indicative of fraud, waste, abuse, or mismanagement. And what they found is that, there's a lot of waste in the federal government. But a lot of that waste has to do with, duplicate payments, things of that nature. And a lot of it has to do with differences in policy positions. In other words, the Biden administration had very different philosophies about what the government ought to be doing and spending money on than the Trump administration does. And therefore, the Trump administration identified a number of things that it felt was inappropriate, whether it be DEI, which is diversity, equity, inclusion, or whether it be certain other matters. And so he canceled those contracts because he didn't support those initiatives. But that doesn't mean it was fraud, and doesn't mean that it was illegal. And the simple fact of the matter is that I think the Doge people didn't realize until after they got into the effort that just because you cancel a contract or just because you cancel a grant doesn't mean you saved any money, because only Congress can cut spending. The only way that they could really save money is to do hiring freezes or to do reductions in force. And so they pivoted and started doing more hiring freezes and started doing more reductions in force. But then you got to be careful when you do that, because if it's not based upon the needs of the agency, and if it doesn't consider the skills and knowledge and performance of the individuals, it can end up being counterproductive. So the bottom line is, as we look at it here today, Doge has claimed to have saved $160 billion, but Grok, which is the AI application of X, which Elon Musk owns, says that it saved a small fraction of that. So they're going to fall. They're going to fall far, far short of what their announced goal was. And the real question is that when Musk leaves, does it continue? Because a lot of these people, in my view, probably affiliated with Doge because they wanted to have some interaction with Elon Musk. And if Elon Musk is gone, what's going to end up happening?
That's the question I was going to ask you, David, along those lines is how long will it be till Elon is gone? Because I've heard that he's supposed to be leaving shortly. And who will be in charge of Doge after he leaves? Or will there be a new person in charge? And why can't they go ahead and hire you? Because you would know what to do and all along those lines. So definitely, why can't they go ahead and do that? But where do you see them going in the next steps?
Well, first, I think Elon is going to end up leaving in May. It's just a matter of when in May. Is he going to leave in early May or is he going to leave in late May? But, as I said, he can only work 130 days as a special government employee. And so that's the ultimate, the ultimate stop. He's talked about, maybe reducing back to 1 to 2 days a week, which would mean he could still be involved for a while longer rather than working 6 to 7 days a week, which is what he's been doing. What's going to happen after he leaves? Only God knows, and God's not telling us. And so I just don't know. I will tell you that, what I was hoping that Doge would do was it would take a much more strategic and transformational review of the government. What is it doing? How's it doing? What level of government? How does it measure success? Really learning from the experience that I had as Comptroller General of the United States, where we did a major transformational reform at the GAO, where we did our first ever strategic plan. And just to remind you, the federal government still doesn't have a strategic plan, even though it's been in business since 1789. So we did our first ever strategic plan around 2000. We took a look at the agency about where we were, where we needed to be, what the differences were. We eliminated about a third of our offices. We reduced our head count by about 15%. We eliminated a layer of management. We consolidated 35 units into 13. We focused more horizontally and externally rather than vertically. We leveraged our technology, modernized our human capital practices. We changed our metrics of success. We became more transparent. And after that, our productivity increased 50 to 100%, even though we had fewer people. We generated over $100 return for every dollar invested in the agency, number one in the world by far. We were rated the second best place to work in the federal government. We had a 95% positive rating from our very difficult client, the U.S. Congress. And what frustrates me is that what we did there is transferable and scalable to the rest of the federal government if you have commitment, the right leadership, and persistence. And that's what we need. Right now, we don't have a plan. We don't have outcome-based metrics. So we're flying blind in mountains of growing debt without an instrument panel. That's not going to lead to a positive outcome. And so I'm anxious to see what ends up happening after Elon leaves and whether or not they end up pivoting and move to a more strategic and transformational approach. But in the end, the big changes are going to require legislation. And that's going to require public understanding and bipartisan support. So
Yeah.
that's the bottom line.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I saw Toby had a question, but before I get to Toby's question, coming back to tariffs, because I know that you and Sasha has talked about this before. Apparently, Trump has said, President Trump, that he's got several people coming to the table and all along those lines, and that there are supposed to be all of these various negotiations, whether it's with China or whether it's with some of these other countries. So, how much of that is political theater, and how much do you really think countries are coming and actually negotiating with the U.S. on this? These tariffs that are out there and they're definitely impacting our economy.
I think there are a number of countries that are coming to the table to negotiate. He did a 90-day pause on most countries, not China. It's not clear that China is negotiating at this point. There's a strong difference of opinion between the Trump administration and the Chinese leadership about whether there are any discussions going on. I think in the end, we'll be able to resolve a vast majority of these, over the next several months. The real challenge is going to be China. How are things going to end up with China? As I said, in my view, the United States needs to be self-sufficient with regard to national security and public health sourcing. We may not be able to be self-sufficient with regard to domestic resources and capabilities. But we need to be self-sufficient between ourselves and our allies, not our adversaries. And we should not have to rely upon adversaries for critical national security and public health issues. We do right now to a great extent. That's going to take years to get us to where we need to be. We need allies more than ever now because we're not 50% of the global economy anymore. The dollar is not as good as gold, and we need to be able to partner for progress on a number of different fronts, and hopefully reason will prevail, after we get past this turbulent period.
Speaking of that turbulent period, and this is actually toward both you and Sasha, but it seems like we lost a major ally because apparently Canada, and Sasha can explain it better than I can, is not that pleased with us and all along those lines. So what can we do to better our relationship with our northern neighbors and everything like that? Because like I said, I know on other shows, Sasha has said that Canada is not buying a lot of American goods. I think I'm saying that correctly, Sasha, and everything, but I'd rather you speak your own words rather than me trying to put words in your mouth.
Yeah, I'd like to hear from Sasha. Yeah, go ahead, Sasha.
Well, for many, many years, if not decades, Canada was and still is, I think, the largest trading partner of the United States. A lot explained by geography, of course, and there's a huge border between both countries. And see, the problem is with this tariffs issue. Okay, you can announce tariffs and you can cancel the same tariffs the next week, 2, 3 weeks. But the damage has been enormous. It's no billions of dollars will repair the damage that has been done. The Canadians are genuinely hate United States. All snowbirds, so-called, they're all almost evacuating from Florida and other places, mostly from Florida. They're selling their properties at 10, 15% loss just to get out. The travel to United States is close to zero from Canada. And as a result, obviously, U.S., especially travel industries, they are suffering and will suffer even more. So, what Trump has achieved by his rhetorics of Canada becoming 51st state and the tariffs war, and he's essentially he's breaking the NAFTA agreement that he himself negotiated in his first cadence. So, what apparently it's very clear what he's lost, what United States gained from his reckless policies.
Well, Canada is our number one trading partner. Mexico is our number two trading partner. China is our number three trading partner. And there's absolutely no question that there's been serious adverse damage done. in my view, with our relations with Canada as a result of some of the rhetoric and as a result of the tariff situation. And I'm hoping that will heal in time, but because we have a lot in common and we need each other. And but we'll see. We'll see.
Okay.
And I don't know, are they still booing us for the booing the national anthem at the hockey games and the baseball games?
No, they make announcement before the U.S. anthem to be quiet, respect, not to boo, and so on. But it works, I would say.
Oh, that's good. Well, I know that our Washington Capitals are playing the Montreal Canadiens,
Yes.
In hockey playoffs or whatever. So I think we're ahead 3-1 right now, but who knows? Anything can happen. Yeah.
Oh, well, objectively, Washington Capital is much stronger team than Montreal. And it's expected that they will win the series, maybe 4-1, maybe 4-2, most likely 4-1. And we'll see how it will go further. Very interesting series between Los Angeles and Edmonton Oilers. Los Angeles took a lead 2-0, 2-0, then 2-1. And yesterday they were leading 3-1 in the fourth game. And yet Edmonton was able to escape and actually win the game. So there's a tie to each, and we'll see which way it will turn.
Well, we'll have to get back to economics, but we all know that. But sports is all about economics too. Believe me, it's all about the money.
Jacoby knows that quite well. And as a matter of fact, I think that when they play Carolina Hurricanes next, if the Washington wins and everything, I'm not sure what that order is and everything like that. But I do know that.
So everybody out west is sitting at 2-2 in a series tie. Edmonton will probably beat the LA Kings, just from the way they've been playing. The Caps and the Canes will play next because the Caps are sitting at 3-1. The Canes are sitting at 3-1. Out of that series, I think the Canes will probably win. But the scary team, and which Sasha, you didn't even say anything about it. Toronto, if they get out of that first round, they're a scary team because they've got experience on their side because they've kept their team together over the past few years since COVID. And it's a very young team. It's a very big, fast, and deep team. So Toronto should make it out of their first round. Then they're going to end up with the Panthers, and they'll probably beat the Panthers unless Bobrovsky comes off with another, crazy setup. But I think it'll be the Leafs and the Canes playing for the Eastern Championship to go to the Stanley Cup.
Very possible. Actually, Leafs are number 3, according to the odds. Leafs are number 3 team to win Stanley Cup after Caroline and the Panthers, Florida.
And I think, and like I said, I think because of the way the Leafs are sitting, and you guys have Austin Matthews, and I mean the whole group is
very strong.
So honestly. Of course, having Canadian family and understanding how much Toronto means to the whole entirety of Canada, it is unreal. There's Edmonton, sure. There's Montreal, sure. But no, it's all about Toronto. If they get close.
Well, it's about time. Last time Toronto won Stanley Cup was 1967.
Wow.
And it's about time maybe try one more time to become.
That's a long time ago and everything. You had a question economically speaking, Jacoby, as well, because I saw your hand go.
Well, at the beginning, we were discussing, and Dave, you had brought up some numbers about, for example, Doge. How Doge really hasn't saved really much of anything. And what it's found are it didn't find fraud. It found policy differences and everything else, as we've discussed before. But it's only the amount of money that it's being saved isn't being pushed out there as much as what it said it was going to save and how much it attacked particular things. So this brings me to my question of the show. how much really was it about the show more than actually doing things? And how much longer can we last living in the show more so than actually doing things? Because another thing that's kind of on the show realm, Trump is now going after the pollsters that are giving him bad polls to continue the show, because right now he's underwater on all the polls across the board, even economically. But yeah, it just gets back to that question of how much do you feel the this is all about the show more so than actually reality?
Well, Trump is many things, including an entertainer, and he knows how to get attention, and he wants to lead the headlines. He doesn't want to be on the defensive; he wants to be on the offensive. With regard to Doge, you have to keep in mind that while Elon Musk is brilliant, and he's obviously been highly successful with regard to his companies, he's the world's richest person. He's got zero government experience. And as somebody who's led organizations in the private sector, the public sector, the not-for-profit sector, the government is very, very different than the private sector. And I don't think he understood that. And, I think part of the, while they clearly wanted to save money, I do think that part of the effort was to try to demonstrate that there's a lot of waste in government. And there is a lot of waste in government. They've got way outdated information systems. Many of them are decades old. If you've got systems that are still using COBOL, you got a problem, okay? And by the way, that was part of the problem is a lot of these big information systems like Social Security use COBOL, and so they thought that these people were 150, 200 years old, when in reality they didn't understand how COBOL works, and they're not that old, all right? So I think, part of it was to show how messed up government is, and to try to be able to create a narrative. Look, there's an opportunity to save a lot of money. And there is an opportunity to save a lot of money, but I think there are several things that they didn't understand coming in. Number one, about 75% of all the direct spending by the federal government is mandatory spending. You can't change it without changing the law. Secondly, I don't think they understood the way the appropriations process works. They give you a ceiling and a floor. Therefore, if you end up canceling a contract or canceling a grant, you don't have to spend it on that particular item, but you got to spend it on something else. So therefore, you don't save money. The only way that you can save money immediately is through headcount, because the Congress gives you a maximum but not a minimum. And so I think that's why they pivoted to that. I also think that they were naive, okay, with regard to what the rules are in government, and my real concern is that they further undercut trust and confidence in government when it was already low. And secondly, they further divided Republicans and Democrats in Congress, when in reality, in order to have significant savings, it's going to take legislation and it's going to take bipartisan support. So my view is what they ought to do is they ought to pivot, and they ought to start dealing with the more, strategic and transformational change that's necessary. They need to have people involved who have experience with government transformation. They need to have people involved who have credibility on both sides of the political aisle. And if they do that, they can actually make some progress over time. But if they don't do that, I'm afraid not much is going to result.
That makes a lot of sense. We've been joined by Kim as well. She might have some questions about Doge and the economy also, since our other founder is probably caught up in that power outage that we were talking about on the other show, since he's in Spain now, and there was a massive power outage in Spain and Portugal. So I'm thinking that's why Nick's not been here all day and everything, because there's that massive power outage that they've been going through. So how are you doing, Kim? And you got any questions for Dave?
Oh, I've always got questions. I think I asked him one over the weekend, but there's just so many things that have been impacted by the decisions that they chose to make, the consequences are killing our economy. The consequences are not making us better. Okay, it's the writing's on the wall. Nobody wants to do business with us, and it's like I said, China has been long prepared for something like this, and they can self-sustain without us for a very long time, and they were prepared for it. What happened to me, though, you say was ignorance, I say was arrogance. Just like when he tried to cut budgets and he cut the pandemic team and promised to hire them back if we ever needed him, and he never did because his arrogance gets in the way. He has long time used filing bankruptcy as a means to fix his books. And that's not a businessman. Neither here nor there. We're stuck with him. How do we get around it? Can we get rid of him? Can we fix them? I mean, and how do we do it? How do we go up there? Because, you got Marjorie Green going, they didn't make us money, so they deserve to be fired. Well, you know what? You don't make us money either. And as far as I'm concerned, you guys haven't done any good for us. You deserve to be fired.
Well,
And so I think it's the attitude, the angst, the lack of appreciation for the people who put them in office, the lack of respect for the people, and they want people to bow down to them. And that's got to stop. So how do we change the course that we are on today? And then the other question I have for you, did you hear any rumors about the hospitals closing? So
all right. Well, several things. First, Trump doesn't lack from self-confidence. Okay. and he does come across as arrogant at times. Okay. There's no question about that. But understand this. I've said many times, and this it doesn't make a difference whether the Republicans are in charge or the Democrats are in charge. If Congress got paid for performance, they would owe us money. Congress is much more dysfunctional, frankly, than the executive branch is. And one of the reasons that Congress is much more dysfunctional than the executive branch is nobody's in charge. You have somebody in charge of each of the political parties and each of the houses, but nobody's in charge overall. All right. And whether you like Trump or not, he's at least in charge. Okay.
right. How do we change this course?
Right. And so what's going to have to happen is, he is now starting to realize that the way that he approached the tariff situation was not the right way. Okay. It was not reciprocity. It was a plug number based upon the trade imbalance. As a result, he's imposed this temporary pause for 90 days on most. He's modified his course. I think that if things don't go the way that he thinks they're going to go, he's shown a willingness to change course, and that's what he needs to do, if you will. But I've said before, the two big things that we need to get done is we got to get past this tariff problem. Tariffs should only be used on a temporary and targeted basis, in my view, to deal with inequities. Tariffs should not be used as a primary revenue source for the federal government. It was back in the 1800s, but the world was a very different place. And by the way, back when it was in the 1800s, the federal government was less than 3% of the economy. Now the federal government is about 25% of the economy and growing. It's a totally different situation. So we've got to get that, and we got to put our finances in order. If we're going to end up stabilizing and create a better situation in the short term and sustainable over time.
Do you think that if he does just say, you know what, let's just put all the tariffs back and then we'll rework them, do you think that will stabilize the stock market a little bit better, or do you think that that's just left to a trampoline for a while?
I think that he's going to end up having some deals announced within the next couple of weeks, that will, that the thrust of those deals will show that there is a way to try to resolve these trade situations that are reasoned and reasonable. And as long as he continues to show momentum based upon that, okay, I mean, we actually need see some real deals, not that we're negotiating, but we actually have some real agreements, all right? And I know they're making progress with Japan, with South Korea, and several other countries, but you need to see a deal that's done, all right, and the nature of the deal. The one that I'm the most concerned about is China. And it's not just from the standpoint of the economic side. Frankly, I'm concerned from the national security side. I mean, might China use this as an excuse to go against Taiwan? And the simple fact is that we rely upon People's Republic of China too much for rare earth minerals and materials for prescription drugs, but we also rely upon Taiwan too much for high-end semiconductor chips, and that's just a fact. And while ultimately we need to try to move away from that to become self-sufficient either domestically and or in alliance with our partners, that's going to take years. That's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take years.
Well, and a lot of people don't understand that it's not just materializing like it does in a movie or on TV to build a manufacturing facility, have the people knowledgeable enough to manufacture. You just don't work an assembly line. Manufacturing has also research and development, repairing, fixing. I mean, there's a lot to a microchip. My husband used to design them before they outsourced all of that to other countries. He actually trained other countries because that was his job. And I guess all of these guys, trained their replacements in other countries. So the problem resides, David, that though you guys and everyone, the leaders say we need to bring it back to America, it's proven time and again that's not the affordable means. That's not where the investors make their money. The board of advisors, none of those people make their money. How do we fix that problem? Because I agree, like when we were under COVID, there were so many things we could not supply ourselves, and that wasn't good. But how do we establish something like this that we know is not going to generate the revenue necessary for the investors to make enough money? How do we fix this problem?
Well, sometimes you have to provide subsidies, public subsidies, right? But again, right. I come back. We'll go to Sasha right after this, but I come back to my main point. We need to be self-sufficient with regard to national security and public health, either domestically and or in partnership with our allies. Beyond that, it should be free and fair trade, okay? We don't need to produce everything here. If it doesn't have anything to do with national security or public health, there's no reason we can't buy things from other places, all right? And the simple fact of the matter is it's going to be at lower cost for U.S. consumers because we can't compete on wages. We have to compete on innovation, productivity, quality, and reliability. That's what we have to compete on. We can't compete on wages. We don't want to compete on wages. Sasha.
Well, a very simple example to amplify Kim's point. Right now, there's a toy manufacturing industry. There will be no toys in U.S. stores for Christmas because right now there is an ordering period, and under the current environment, companies cannot order any toys from China. They cannot produce any toys in the United States, and so the orders are being canceled. Orders are not renewed. There will be empty shelves, and this is just one of the examples that Trump probably never thought about very simple factors that even bring manufacturing back to U.S. U.S. does want to manufacturing plastic and other toys. So you have facilities for that. You have trained workers for doing that. No, you need to bring that from China. To bring that for China, you have to accommodate their problems with tariffs and deal with that directly and get your pride into the garbage can and just become realistic and approach China, say we made a mistake. Don't mince the words. Just say what it is, and you will get much more mileage out of than pretending that, okay, we did the tariffs for China and so on. This is very, very incomprehensive and absolutely wrong attitude from Trump's
Well,
administration
well,
and
well,
Trump
Sa-
himself.
well, Sasha, as you know, it's not just what you say, but how you say it. It's not just what you do,
Yes,
but how you do it. It
absolutely.
matters a lot. It's particularly important with regard to Asian countries and in particular China, because it's all about saving face,
Yeah.
right? I
Yeah.
mean, it's a very, very important factor to that culture.
Well, and I was always raised, my dad would always say, leave the man some dignity. You may be taking him down, you may be bringing him back around where he needs to be. When I was in business and people would try to do certain things, and he says, why don't you let the man negotiate a deal where he can walk away with some dignity? And at first you don't want to do, but then when you do, you end up hopefully making a friend out of the lion instead of an enemy. But Sasha, what you brought up about the toys is funny because I went to Target the other day, something I normally don't do, but it just happened to be there. And when I went in there, I was shocked at how many aisles, and not short, long aisles of children's toys, not clothes, just toys there were. And then, the accessories that goes with the toys, and then some books, one aisle of books and one half aisle of puzzles, and then, bikes. But I counted 12 aisles of toys. There weren't that many aisles of food. So it's interesting you say that. Maybe we need to, buy up all the ones on the shelves we have this year. And maybe that's, our humbleness is we'll learn that, but that's interesting you brought that up, because that was something I looked at going, why do we have more aisles of toys than we do of food? And so, maybe this is going to be a lesson we learn. But David, when we're doing this kind of stuff, how do the citizens survive? Because it's not about just toys, but just the things that we're used to buying and the conveniences of having, they're going away. And then you talk about, I hear people go, oh, our unemployment's down. I don't see how that can be when you just fired millions of people. And we all know the rule of thumb: for every middle class person you fire, you impact 7 of the community jobs. So how are we going to recover from this ripple?
Well, a couple of things, and then we want to go. Let me mention. I'll answer your question, and then we'll go to Jatovi and Sharif because they've had their hand up. Okay.
Oh yeah. Okay. It's hard to see from here.
Our unemployment rate is 4.2%, which is pretty low. Okay. The biggest problem we have with regard to employment is the gap between what we need and what we have. There are a lot more jobs available than there are people looking for jobs, because we don't have the right kind of skills and knowledge, to fill the needs that employers have. And I think one of the things that we're going to have to do is not only try to promote macroeconomic growth and maintain stable prices, which are the 2 primary jobs of the Federal Reserve, but we're also going to have to change immigration policy. And we're going to end up having, in my view, a new category where workers can end up coming in for specific periods of time to be able to do things that need to be done, okay, that we otherwise don't have enough people to do. And I'm working with Joe Penland, Joe from Texas, on some creative ways to get that done. Now that we've got border security, we should be in a position to where we can end up starting to do some immigration reform. And I hope that will end up happening. Jatovi, and then Sharif, and then Sasha may have something after that.
I want to roll back to, there was one comment you made that you said that he has a willingness to change, but I still don't see that, because, for example, with the tariffs, he still has more tariffs that he said that he was going to announce. his campaign was that he was going to replace taxes with tariffs, and that was going to be how we were going to that's how we were going to make America great again and make America rich again by utilizing tariffs. And so I don't see a willingness to change because he's stuck in that mode.
Can I answer you? A, he's abandoned that. He's not talking about using, replacing income taxes with tariffs. So he's abandoned that. And secondly, he came out with these incredibly high tariffs that were not reciprocal tariffs, despite being advertised as being reciprocal tariffs. But he's now, in some cases, exempted certain types of goods from it, and in other cases, delayed the imposition of the tariffs for up to 90 days. So, I mean, that's a change. Okay. Part of the problem is whether it's tariffs, whether it's deportation, and I can give you some other examples. They don't think these things through enough, in my view. Okay, and so as a result, they set unrealistic expectations, and then they have to come off of it when they don't work, and that's what's happening. And frankly, that's what's happening with Doge. I mean, they're going to save $2 trillion, they're going to save $1 trillion, they're going to save $500 billion. They're not even going to save $100 billion. All right, and we're running deficits of $2 trillion a year.
And so, I mean, even with the tariffs, as you just discussed, I mean, when it's so inconsistent, and he's already stated that he makes he makes these decisions based off his gut, and they just ride with him, and that's not a good way to make decisions in the first place, because a lot of in his quote unquote gut, the reason he took off cell phones was because both Apple and one of his biggest backers with Apple CEO and the head of Google all went to him and told him, you're hurting us here. And so they cut this cell phone. They carved cell phones out of tariffs.
Yeah.
Well, that was one of the biggest IP stealings of the whole thing. And so now it's okay to do that. So it's just so inconsistent, and his ideas around that are problematic. For example, Subaru just said that they are going to source their stuff from Japan now. They're closing up shop manufacturing in the U.S. due to the fact of this problem and this inconsistency with tariffs. Hyundai has also said that they were going to pare back their issues within the U.S. due to the same reasons. And there are some other companies that are out there that are doing the same exact thing. So this is why I say I don't see him changing his mind because of that inconsistency, or being able to, if his gut's not going to tell him, or if somebody's not going to bankroll him some money to tell him, he doesn't change it. He just sits there until, because even now he's saying that he doesn't care about the polls, but now he's going after the Justice Department to go after the bad polls. So it's just.
Yeah, well, he does, he can't run again, despite some people saying that, let's go for a third term. There's no way that 3/4 of the states would ratify an amendment that would allow him to run for a third term. That's a non-starter. Okay. Same thing for Barack Obama. Recently, I've heard people say, well, let's bring Obama back. There's no way that 3/4 of the states would allow that either. So he's got 3.5 years left. That's what he's got. All right. We'll see what happens in that 3.5. I'm a big believer that when you're making big transformational change, you need to have a clearly defined goal, and you need to have clearly defined, objectives. You need to be transparent with regard to what you're trying to accomplish, what you're doing, what you're finding. Clearly defined, consistently applied, transparent. Policies, priorities, if you will. They don't have that. Okay, and that's a mistake. All right. And that's one of the reasons why they're creating so much uncertainty, which then leads to more volatility, which then leads to, less trust and confidence with allies and with others, okay? And they need to get control of that. That is not good. And it is not something that should happen. And it's something that hopefully they'll learn from and adjust. Because while he may not be worried about the polls because he can't stand for re-election, members of Congress worry about it. Sharif.
It was Sharif.
Yeah, thank you. I have a question because today's discussion is very interesting. You are negotiating and discussing many critical points of USA. My point is, let's say after this Soviet Union, the Russia declining, US become the global leaders. And USA has great impact in the global arena with their democratic cultures, with their open society concept, with their educations, with their Hollywood like media, even with their social media platform and all of the things. But how we see right now, and from your discussion, what we understand that now USA has real challenge. And on the other hand, Trump has a concept of make America great again. So what do you think? USA is declining from stays from the power, or Trump can achieve the objective, what he said, make America great again?
Well, first, let's go back to World War II. At the end of World War II, the United States was a little over 50% of global GDP. It had a significant majority of manufacturing capacity. It was the only major nation that avoided attacks on its homeland. The dollar was as good as gold. Demographics were working in our favor. We had 16 plus people working for every person drawing retirement benefits. So things were, we had a baby boom. All right. Now let's fast forward. United States is probably about 28% of global GDP, down from a little over 50. We're not the manufacturing giant. China is the manufacturing giant. Okay. The dollar's not as good as gold. We only have 1.62 birth rate for every female, which means that our population is declining without immigration. Okay. And so we're in a very different situation. All right. At the end of World War II, we were it. Yes, the Soviet Union existed, but they were never a superpower from the standpoint of all elements. They were not a major economic power. They weren't then. They're not now. They were a military power, no question about it. They were a diplomatic power, but they didn't have major cultural influence. And those are the four factors: economic power, diplomatic influence, military capability, and cultural influence. They had 2 of 4. We had all 4. We were unrivaled for a long time, all right? But now China's coming up. China's got economic power. It's got diplomatic influence. It's got a strong military, which is not projected globally, but they've got a desire to do that. And they've got cultural influence. And so, it's a whole different ball game. And as I come back and I say, the United States has to learn from history and learn from others. The leading indicator on the way up as a superpower is economic power. The leading indicator on the way down is economic power. We still have economic power, but we've lost control of our finances. If you can't put your finances in order, you won't maintain economic power. And that's why I say that, we've got to put our finances in order, because if we don't, we'll lose economic power, we'll lose diplomatic influence, we'll lose military capabilities, we'll lose cultural influence, and we'll still be, a strong nation. We'll still be a major power. By the way, the Make America Great Again, my view is the proper theme ought to be Keep America Great. Because I think America is great, but I do think we have some serious problems, all right, that we got to come to. but it's a matter of whether we're going to keep America great, not whether we're going to make America great.
Hey, David, along those same lines, and Kimberly actually alluded to it earlier and everything, one of the things that is a major issue in society is medical care and everything along those lines. So, where are we at in terms of our economics and the economics of hospital care? Because I know some people are concerned about Medicare and Medicaid and some of the impacts that are going on in hospitals. And I think Kim was alluding to the fact that certain hospitals, including some major hospitals, are under threat of closing down and everything like that. So, where are we at economically with the hospital situations?
Well, first, let's talk macro healthcare, then we can talk about the hospitals. The United States spends over 18% of its annual production. Over 18% of the economy is healthcare. That's number one in the world by far. Nobody's close. All right. Despite that fact, we are below average with regard to life expectancy, infant mortality. We're above average on medical error rates. So we spend a lot more money and we get below average results for our industrialized nation. So we need major healthcare reform. With regard to hospitals, Kim mentioned to me that she's heard there's some hospitals closing in Pennsylvania. My daughter-in-law is a nurse, works in a hospital in Pennsylvania, and I talked to her about that issue. Fortunately, her hospital is fine, but she's saying that there are a number of hospitals that are suffering primarily because of uncompensated care. They're getting a lot of people who are, and in many cases, illegals, okay, who are coming to the hospitals who do not have insurance, and yet under current laws, they're required to provide them service, whether they can recover or not. In some cases, it's disproportionately rural, hospitals. But in some cases, the ones that are in major metropolitan areas that historically have provided more service to the poor or the uninsured are the ones being hit by it. So look, we need major healthcare reform that differentiates between what are broad-based societal needs and what are unlimited individual wants. We haven't done that. We also can't write a blank check for healthcare; it'll bankrupt the country.
No, we can't.
Yeah, we can't. All right, and we also need to dramatically streamline the bureaucracy associated with healthcare. There's so much money that's spent on administrative cost, if you will, for healthcare. It's absolutely absurd. So, those are just a few things.
No, that makes a lot of sense. By the way, I just wanted to, and I know we got only a few minutes ago and others may have questions also, but to Louis Teshari gave us love. So apparently we did have a listener that gave us love. So definitely whenever I see that, I'd like to give them a shout out and all along those lines. So that is a listener that gave the old love button and gave us a credit for this great discussion. So I don't know if others had questions.
Louis Teshua.
Sure. Just one of the things that I'm curious about, again, it keeps coming up is the Social Security and Medicaid and Medicare and all of that. But, with Social Security, they say they're not going to cut it. But what they're saying is in order to continue getting it and get your benefits, you have to go into the office, meet with the people. But they're cutting the people, they're closing the offices. So I think that, and somebody else brought this up on a post this morning, they believe that this is their sneaky way getting around closing it down and making sure people can't get to it. It's hard enough getting a phone consult with someone, sometimes it's scheduled out even 3 months, let alone getting a in-person meeting. So what do you think is going to happen, David? Because this is our money.
Well, first, Social Security. What Doge was doing was they were looking for fraud with regard to Social Security. Doge was never looking to try to cut, cost associated with legitimate Social Security claims. Okay. Secondly, Social Security is the most popular federal program. By far, the most popular. Okay. Secondly, it's reasonably well run as compared to other, federal programs. Um, Furthermore, you know, despite the fact that Social Security right now is able to pay all of its benefits when due on time, that's not going to be the case in 8.5 years, because the way the law works is you can only pay benefits from the so-called trust funds. Right now, there are reserves in the trust funds, but those trust fund reserves are being drawn down because we're now paying out more than we're receiving in. And in 8.5 years, the trust funds will be exhausted. Now, there'll still be money, but there'll only be 79 cents in revenue for every dollar of benefits promised, which means that under current law, you would have to cut everybody's benefits immediately across the board, 21%, and growing over time. That is an unacceptable outcome from an equity standpoint and from a political standpoint. They won't let that happen, all right? But the real question is, when are they going to do something about it? The last time that we faced this was 1983, and we were within months of that cliff happening. Now we need to be acting sooner rather than later so we can provide more stability, more certainty. People can plan better. There's plenty of ways to reform Social Security to make it solvent, sustainable, secure, and exceed the expectations of every generation of Americans. It's in the book. And it's also the stuff about healthcare. It's in the book. And the frustrating thing is that these reforms get support from an overwhelming majority of the American people, but yet our political leaders are laggards. They're not leaders, they're laggards.
So let us know what we can do to help you with what you're working on and how we can help change and redirect the course, because as we have agreed, whether they're ignorant or arrogant or just plain dumb laggers, it's on the wrong course. It has given us a bad reputation, taken away the trust in the world working with us, which we got to fix. So whatever it is we need to do, let's start talking together about those plans and put it into action, because if it means removing people from office, then let's do it. And
go to americain2040.com.
Okay. I like it. Americain2040.gov, folks. And
.com.
not .gov.
Right.
And you know what? We're at the top of the hour. Stay healthy so you stay wealthy. And we will see you next week at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Economics with David Walker. Take care, everyone, and we'll see you soon. Mark, you got it? If not, I'll get it. Need to tie the intro.